What's up, everyone? I'm Scott,
And I'm Jason.
and you are listening to Liquid Carnage, my friend. It is cold, wet, rainy, and dark. It's like winter in the Northeast has come to the Southwest to vacation, and it is not fun.
Yeah, no, it's I am in a relationship with someone who's never left Arizona, basically, and people who are from Arizona and never leave Arizona, they're not
Mhm.
used to cold weather, man. They're not used to having that chill in the air. It kind of numbs them. It's
Yeah.
kind of like when those amphibians, they freeze and they
hmm
just shut down, right? And then once it warms up, then they open up again and then they're moving. But while they're frozen, they're lifeless.
Yeah. Well, that's what it feels like to be in Arizona in the winter, and this has been an especially cold and wet winter. And part of what I do for my job is I give tours to physicians and prospective senior management and directors and whatnot. And I
Yes.
feel like a broken record this time of year where I'm having to explain it's not normally like this in January. I promise you, it's usually mostly sunny and in the 50s and sometimes 60s. This is an
Yeah.
aberration for the season.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I don't have to explain myself at any jobs, but um, just talking about it with my coworkers, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so cold, and I'm used to having it in the 60s or 70s, and it's in the 50s, and so I get it, man.
Yeah, it's nice for a day. Don't get me wrong, and I feel like there's definitely different seasons of snow and cold and wet. I feel like if it happens before Christmas, everyone's in awe of the white the white snowfall and how it looks so pretty, and it's you want to go out and play in it. And then once you get past the New Year, it's like, all right, screw this, I'm over it.
Yeah,
Uh,
I kind of equate the responses, from people the same way that I look at, like, when you look at someone who's really, really petite and they say, "Oh my gosh, I've got to lose weight because I've gained 5 pounds," and you're
mhm.
like, "Oh, give me a break. 5 pounds is nothing." But then you have to put it in the other perspective. But for someone who is very petite, 5 pounds is a lot.
Oh yeah,
So same with the weather. Like, some people say, "Oh man, it's cold, it's dreary," and people say, "52? Are you kidding me? That's not cold and dreary."
yeah,
But they have to keep in mind that we're used to 75 degrees right now.
yeah.
We're not used to 50-degree weather.
When you live your life 100 degrees at a time,
Yeah.
55 and dreary is a whole lot different ball game.
And I feel the same way on the other side. Oh my gosh, it's so hot. It's 85 degrees out. Are you serious? Really?
Like, really?
Give me a break. Yeah, yeah. Quit your bitching and fix supper.
You know what I call 85-degree days out?
Winter?
Day drinking weather.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there
That
we go.
is outside day drinking weather.
Yep.
Coincidentally, I also call that on 65-degree days and sunny. Pretty much if it's a sunny, nice day out and it's warm in the sun, I call it day drinking weather. But, it
Scott,
gets my point
no
across.
offense, dude. It could be 22 degrees and snowing and you call it day drinking weather.
That
You
is not
cannot
true.
tell me that there's any distinction between any temperature. And if it's, how about this? If it's between sunrise and sunset, it's day drinking weather, man.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so. But it sounds classier if you don't tell them I'll drink regardless.
That's true. Yeah, there's a lot of judgments that are made if you just tell
hmm
them that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, I like the rain. I am a fan of all the weather that we're getting for the long term health of the drought that we were in. I'm just ready for it. Just give us a couple days. I just need to see some blue skies. I just need to see, get some of that sun, get some of those vitamins, some of those antidepressants. Because when you see the sun so much, then you don't see it for a week and a half at a time. It starts to mess with you. It messes with your mentals.
Yeah, yeah. No, we when I was in Seattle, a lot of people were worried about my mentals because it would be like, there was a stretch while I was in college that it was 95 days straight of rain. 95 days straight of rain. And people are like, "Oh, it's so dark and gloomy," and everyone just kind of gets used to it. You just kind of make your way through and hope for the best, but uh, you know, everything is all relative, especially if you're not used to that kind of weather. It throws you off.
Oh yeah. Well, I can tell you, if there's even one drop of rain on the ground, that tells me the dogs are not going outside to relieve themselves, because they won't get their paws wet or dirty, so they are going to go in the house.
And that's when you have to do the cleanup.
Yep.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, as it rains, I did order a new Shark steam and scrub mop, and I am excited. This is the epitome of middle age. I am
Wow.
excited to get this bad boy tested, and to see what it does. But It's got 3 different settings. It scrubs and it steams at the same time. So I never thought I'd see the day where I'm excited to go use this thing, try it out.
Well, it's so weird because that is kind of an old person's thing, but that just sounds really cool. That just
Yeah.
sounds really cool. And especially if you have pets. If you have
Hmm.
pets, those kind of things are like a lifesaver because, obviously all of us who have pets that have to deal with indoor accidents understand and appreciate the powerful tools that are available to us with a little bit of extra money spent in order to keep the house from smelling like a urinal,
Yes.
a pet urinal. So I'm with you 100% on that. So age or not, you appreciate it.
And just with a similar story. And I was in the gym today before I came home, and I work out with a young lady who has been to the CrossFit Games a few years in a row now. So it's a worldwide event. She's qualified in the teen event. She just turned 18, and we were chatting today as we were warming up, and she goes, I feel very adult because I had to spend $50 on windshield wipers, and I'm so excited to go get to use them. I said,
Yes.
yeah,
See?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I said, welcome to adulthood. You
Yeah.
might as well start
Here's the other
getting
thing that
random
she's going to
pains
learn about
now.
adulthood. At least this is what I learned that was a big adjustment. All those vacation days and all those breaks that you get in school, you don't get
Hmm.
them when you're an adult.
Unless you're a teacher.
Unless you're a teacher, that's right. And even then, you're dealing with kids, so you're kind of ipso facto dealing with the kids. But like today, Noreen, or for Martin Luther King Day, Noreen had the day off, so her company gave her the day off. She also gets President's Day off. My next off day is Memorial Day.
Yeah, mine too. Mine too.
Which tells you that even as you become an adult, you're not guaranteed the benefits of being a kid.
No.
And one of them is the holidays, getting those days off. We were somewhere and we asked the question, well, do you think that? Oh, it was Costco. Do you think Costco's open on Memorial Day or on Martin Luther King Day? And I was like, yeah. I mean, I don't
Don't see
understand. I
why I
don't
wouldn't.
know if you would be getting that day off. They might do they might do a thing where if you're hourly and you work on a holiday, they might pay you time and a half, maybe, but because it is a federal holiday. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's no guarantee that you're not going to work.
Yeah.
So
That's what I always appreciate about working at a bank. From the time you get to Labor Day until President's Day, you basically have a 3-day weekend every 3 or 4 weeks.
yeah, and that is the
You
yeah.
know, and that's cool. That's cool for those folks. And you're right. The rest of us that have to work, sometimes you get time and a half. If you're hourly, if you're salary, you're just SOL, and that's just the way it goes. But that's a nice way to segue in today's topic, which is the pros and cons of being hourly versus salary.
Yeah, there's a lot of pros and cons because I've done both.
Yeah, me too.
I have done both, and I haven't been an hourly employee in a long, long time though. So my hourly days are probably, gosh, 20 years.
Yeah, I'm probably
20
pretty close
years since I was
to
an
it.
hourly employee.
I'm probably pretty close to that. Do I take that back? I was hourly for the first year and a half I was at the bank, and then I was hourly for probably the first 3 years I was at the hospital. And I have to tell you, while I appreciated hourly, I think for me, salary is the way to go.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about what kind of jobs usually are associated with an hourly wage,
Yeah,
because I do feel that plays a big part into the hourly versus salary type of career.
yeah. I think the hourly jobs are they're sometimes your entry level jobs. They're your jobs that skilled labor, um, construction. Often it's the restaurant business. You don't get a lot of salary jobs on the lower end jobs because when you're salary, you generally have a number of jobs that you've signed up to do with your job description that um, are at a higher level or an intermediate level. So you don't have to have that hourly designation. At least that's the way it's been explained to me.
Okay, so yeah, as an hourly employee, there are certain designations you're saying that you
Yeah.
don't are different than if you were a salaried employee.
Yeah, when I had people working underneath me, they started off as hourly, and to move them to salary, I had to bulk up their job descriptions, and give them some more responsibility to justify the expense of moving them to salary.
Yeah, and I think that that's like I have a friend who is he's a traveler and he is an hourly person though. So if part of his traveling, if he has to fly somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
that's part of his work week. So usually on the days that he comes home at the end of a work week, his travel day is usually overtime for him because he's already amassed enough, 40 hours worth of work time, and so that time becomes um, paid to him at like time and a half, which is better than if he was salaried. Then he would just it would all be wrapped up. And if you worked, 40 hours, 400 hours, you get paid the same amount as a
But
salaried person.
there's pros and cons to every occupation that has that. In his case, it works out well for him. You have to work the system. My dad stopped promoting in the highway patrol at a certain point because had he promoted, he would have switched from hourly to salary, thus wiping out all the overtime he got to soak up working the road and covering for people.
Right. Okay. And for him, the prestige of moving up in the department was not as important as his paycheck.
Yeah, especially when it's aiding in your retirement funds and those calculations.
Okay. Yeah. So that's something I guess that because my friend is a firefighter and he's like that. So when they do he does a 1 day on, 2 days off schedule,
Mm-hmm.
and then after 3 weeks they call it a Kelly day, which is a day where you basically select at the very beginning of the year and you never work that day. So it goes 1 day on, 2 days off, and it rotates through. And then on the week where you would normally have to work, let's say it's Tuesday, right? Let's say that Tuesday is your Kelly day. The week where you normally your schedule would say 1 day on falls on a Tuesday, you don't work that Tuesday, and basically you get a 5 day weekend that weekend. Um, so he says, "Oh, it's fantastic. It's really a good deal because I get a 5 weekend off." But
Mm-hmm.
if they call me in and say, "Hey, I need you to, can you work on your Kelly day, which is a Saturday?" He gets time and a half for that
Yeah,
day, and he works a 24-hour day. So he says it's like 700, $800 extra um, a month if he works his one Kelly day, to because he's considered hourly. Now he works for a public entity, so maybe that's why they're able to do that as part of they don't make these firefighters salary because obviously the way that their work is scheduled, you can't necessarily make them salary, but I, that's one of the perks, right? Is that if you work on a day you're not supposed to work, you get some pretty good sized checks.
yeah, that's the downside to salary. It's like they tell you what they're going to pay, and that's what they pay, and it doesn't matter if you work 4 hours or 40 hours. That's your money. So at the end of the day, you know what you're getting, no matter what. But the downside is you also know what you're getting, no matter what.
Well, and one of the other things that I've heard from on people who work hourly is if you are because where it gets really expensive for an entity is if it's overtime and it's a holiday. Now
Yeah,
you're talking like 2.5 times your pay for that shift. So it starts to add up pretty quick.
yeah. I think a lot of companies offer double time on holiday pay when it's overtime.
Okay, yeah, so double time. Okay, so
it.
that would be a perk.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely perks to both. The upside to salary, as far as I'm concerned, at least that I get to experience, is that if you show up and you work 2 hours, they count it for the whole day. So it doesn't matter, if you check a couple emails, mess around, you're out. You have to make sure you clock in at the right time, clock out at the right time, get your full 40 for the week. You just have to, work a minimum amount because in their minds, they figure out they'll get you uh, for that time made up somewhere else.
Okay, so you like the ability that you have that you're not so stuck to if I work 3 hours today, I only get paid for 3 hours. You get paid for a full day whether you work 8 hours or not.
Yeah, because especially my old job, I had a lot of nights and weekends and after hours that I have to work, and that's when they moved me to salary because my hourly was getting to be a problem with my overtime, because they try to justify it out, but I'd have to end up checking out about noon on Thursday and taking a 3.5 day weekend, and stuff would have to sit and wait. So it made more sense to move me over, give me more money, move me to salary, and tweak my job description.
Yeah, and I know that I found too that when I moved to salary, the salaried pay per hour was a lot more than an hourly wage, until you got into the overtime, right?
Yeah,
So, like, if I worked 40 hours and they worked 40 hours, my salary paid a lot more to me than their hourly wage did. But if I worked 55 hours and they worked 55 hours, then it was starting to get like we were getting paid the same amount.
yeah,
And if they worked anything more than I can't remember, but I think it was like 52 hours. If they worked more than 52 hours, they were getting paid more than I was getting paid by working the same 52 hours. And so, one of the things I liked about the salary is that the majority of time, when you're working salary, the exception is that you're going to work more than 50 hours. It's not a rule that you work more than 50 hours. That it's an exception, and you just accept that. Okay, I'm gonna have to work longer than I normally would, but it makes up for the time when I only work half a day, like you said earlier.
yeah. So like I said, there's good and there's bad to it. There's some days where I feel like, hey man, if I was hourly, I'd soak this up as long as I could. I'd take the overtime and I'd run. But then there's other days like, you couldn't pay me enough to stay here any longer than I have to.
Yeah. Yeah. I also like the fact that I don't have to clock in and clock out.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of like I have so in my department we have probably three or four people who are salaried, and then three or four people who run they're like our support desk who
Uh-huh.
are hourly employees. And they have to clock in and clock out every day.
Yeah,
And if they miss a day, then they've got to go to the boss. Whereas I only have to let my boss know about vacation. Hey, I'm taking vacation that day, so don't, use my vacation instead of my normal pay.
yeah.
But that's it. It's a lot easier on the time card.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I always experienced. When I had people work under me, the first thing I did was try to figure out how to move them to salary, just for that same reason. Because I didn't want to mess with. You got to punch out for lunch and punch back in. There's a 6 minute differential. You can't have overtime. There's a lot more rules on the management side to managing people that are hourly versus salary. And I think that that goes to that's a little more complicated. And some people don't mind it, but I don't like that kind of busy work, because you have to stay on top of it, and you're supposed to be able to trust people as adults to go out and do the things they're supposed to do and clock in and clock out on time. But inevitably, that's not always the case. And especially, when you work in the field I used to work in, sometimes you just can't get 2 o'clock to clock in or clock out. You just have to work it on the honor system too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think ours is on the computer system, so you can log in from your computer when you log in, and the time card punch is it's not a machine, it's on the computer as an app, I think. So most people are able to log into a computer, go to the little app, click in that they got there, click in that they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, and it's different for everybody. And and like I said, there's pros and cons to both. And I just I have a hard time being on hourly anymore, because I'll be honest, I don't like working all day Friday. Um, if there's no one there on Friday afternoon, especially with my job now, which is dealing with doctors all day, because
Yeah.
there's no doctors there afternoon on Friday. I could sit at my desk and do busy work for 4 hours, or I could just call it good. And sometimes I do a combination of that. Other times it's if I know they're not there, it's just better just to take off. Like I last Friday, I talked to a doctor at about 1 o'clock, and he said that it was only him and one other doctor basically there that wasn't in surgery or on the floors, because it was Friday afternoon. It was a long weekend because the kids had no school, so there's no point even for him being around.
I wonder too when you're in a situation like that. I wonder if there's something a benefit for the company to have their employees as salaried employees. Remember how if you were traveling, like I remember when I worked at the hospital, that if you were traveling somewhere, um, and you were an hourly employee, that if you got in a car wreck, it was like bad for a company. Or I don't remember how it worked, but there was something negative about being an hourly employee and the company having increased liability because you were on the clock, and if you don't clock out, then there's a problem with you being on the clock and you know, driving in an accident or something like that.
Yeah, I don't
Like I
know.
wonder how I wonder how a company decides who is going to be a salaried employee and who is going to be an out, like what titles or what positions are going to be hourly and what positions are going to be salaried.
And I think it comes down to like what your title is too. You can't have an entry level title. There's oh man, I don't even know how to explain it because I went through a whole class on this, and it's been a couple years because, like I said, I didn't want to mess with the time cards, and I tried to figure out who, what was the best way to get them to hourly or to get them to salary. But uh, it all comes down to like what's in the job description, how valuable their job tasks are toward the company too.
Yeah, yeah. Another thing that I think people have to keep in mind with when they're talking hourly employees is there's a lot of companies that will really adhere to they do not schedule anyone at 32 hours a week or more because they want to avoid having to pay medical benefits for them.
Yeah,
Salary people, you don't have to worry about that.
yeah,
Well, how about this? You may have to worry about a company not offering a benefit package, but you don't have to worry about getting your hour. You're going to get, like you said, you're going to get your pay,
yeah.
whether you're there 30 hours, 5 hours, 100 hours, whatever.
Now the downside is to what I do is if they decided to call me at midnight for God forbid there's a train accident or a bus accident, I have to go in. I got to get up. I got to go in. You
Yep.
know, that's just you might have been here for the last 30 hours, but that's your time, so we're not paying any extra.
Yeah, and I remember when I worked at the hospital, we had a 24-hour on-call person
Yeah,
for a week at a time, and that's exactly what would happen. Is I mean, I'd get a call at 3 o'clock in the morning. Hey, there's an issue going on. Can you answer it? And yeah, you're right. You get up, you go, you do what you need to do, and you go.
yeah, and I always prefer that because, yeah, like I said, you never know when they're going to call, and it just makes it easier. Um, and generally, with the difference in salary versus hourly, you tend to get a little bit more on the salary side. So I always like that. It gave me something to strive for, to shoot for that next goal for getting a raise or what have you.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sure that there's probably people who are listening to saying, "Oh my gosh, hourly is the only way to go because I don't want to get screwed out of overtime." I don't want to get screwed out of overtime for the work I do. So if I work 50 hours, I know I'm going to get paid for working 50 hours.
Yeah, and that's fine.
And I get that. I totally understand that argument.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's there's some, especially when it comes to like industrial or retail or what have you. It's better to be hourly because you have to work crazy hours. You're working odd hours, odd holidays like Martin Luther King Day or President's Day, and you should get compensated for that.
Yeah.
Today was a regular work day for me. Today was just Monday. Nothing special. It was just Monday for me, and that's the way it is.
Yeah. What do you think of the statement that when you're an hourly employee, you're paid for your labor, and when you're a salary employee, you're paid for your what you bring to the table? Maybe it's your mind or your skill set.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that because you have to have a certain set of skills because the salary jobs tend to be a little bit higher level, managements, supervisors. Uh, Sorry, Walt's snorting right into the microphone.
We need to get his opinion then on what he wants to. Does he want to work hourly or salary?
He just wants to nap.
Okay, so in that case, then he's definitely an hourly employee.
Yes, yes, he's an hour.
Gets a little when he gets fed, he gets overtime. Got it. Right.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. This is part of the 4 hours a day he's actually up and moving. I lost my whole train of thought there. I think it's better.
Oh, you were just saying that salary positions seem to be like not higher level, but
More
there's like
critical
a
thinking positions where you have to do a little bit more um, time oriented tasks, and maybe there's some more precision to what you do. You know?
yeah. I mean, the way I looked at it, I remembered is that if you're an hourly employee, I used to work my career out of college was I worked in manufacturing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I always remembered is that the machinists were always hourly employees. They always worked hourly. They never were salaried employees. And there were times obviously where we had to work them over, and it got very expensive because we had to work them over. They had to work more and more and more without days off sometimes. But what I also realized is that from the company's perspective, it's easier. Usually, an hourly employee, it's a little bit easier to find a another worker to do the same type of work,
Yeah.
or another worker to replace that worker. And so the argument was always, well, if we always need to, we can always hire other people to do the same work, which will alleviate the need for overtime,
Yeah.
right? Or alleviate the need for having them to have to work without days off. Whereas, like with what I do, it took them 9 months to find me, and the only reason why they found me is because I had gotten furloughed for COVID.
Hmm.
So I wasn't planning on leaving that job. So they had worked 9 months to try to find my position. And even to this day, they've talked about wanting to hire another programmer, and they haven't found one. So for someone like myself, you can't, you'd be working the overtime. If I was an hourly employee, I might be making crazy money overtime.
Yeah.
Um,
Also, even more.
but because I'm a salaried person, they protected themselves by saying, okay, yeah, we're going to pay a little bit more for his services, but since he's the only one that can do these services, we'll make up for it when we don't have to pay him overtime.
Yeah, it's a skill position more than a general position.
Yeah, yeah.
So as we look to wrapping up today's show, it was just a different thought. We've kind of rambled on the last couple of weeks, and we thought a nice pro and con show without an actual list would be something kind of fun. So from our perspective, I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe we didn't talk in circles nearly as much as we normally do. So, if you have your thoughts or opinions on hourly versus salary, we want to hear about it. Hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, all at Liquid Carnage. If the EP were to ever hire an executive assistant, the EP's EA, what would the qualifications be, and should that person be hourly or salary? Let him know on Instagram or Twitter, all at Liquid_EP.
Well, and I mean, we're right now we're in the depths of the playoffs for football. We've got basketball going, we've got hockey going. All of those players are salaries.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because one, it's hard to replace that job. Two, a lot of times you're going to have. I mean, it's easier just to say we're going to pay you a flat salary that we know of than try to calculate the number of hours that you're spending in rooms watching film and practicing. And it's easier to just say, okay, you're going to put it, we'll just pay you a flat salary. So obviously it works for some careers more than others.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And there's more intangibles in those careers too. That way, you have to take those into consideration.
Yeah, I'd be interested. We should, I should have done some prep work, and I know we were going to talk about this. I should have done some prep work to see, find out more concrete, like what is the cutoff between when its salary is better, when an hourly is better. Like how many hours do you need to work, or what is the proximity of the hourly wage for the same job but paid hourly or salary. It would have been interesting to see that, because I'm sure that there's some think tank that's gone out there and said, okay, well, if you're going to work more than 49 hours a week, then it's better to be 20% lower hourly wage and make up for it on the overtime than it is to be salaried, or whatever that calculation is.
So that sounds like a follow-up next week's show to see if we can actually find some of that information.
I will say this. I know for myself as a worker, I would much rather be paid for my skill than for my labor.
Yes, me too.
I find that like I know a lot of people that when they were needing extra money, they would find a second job, right? Like, I'm going to find a second job, which is one way to make extra money. Don't get me wrong. But I always found that, yeah, but if you work 20 or 30 hours at a second job, that's 20 or 30 hours that you're not going to get back. And
Yeah.
usually the 20 or 30 hours is working I don't want to say a menial job, but a job that you don't care about, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you're not going to go and find your dream job um, that's going to be better than your main job financially, right?
I,
So I've I've always kind of leaned against hourly wage because in order to get more out of my wage, I have to commit more of my time to it, and I never liked that.
yeah, yeah,
You know, like my salary, like you said, I know what I'm going to get. I know what I'm going to get, and there's going to be probably 3 or 4 weeks a year where I'm going to get screwed. You know, I'm going to work an extra 10 hours on something or 20 hours a week on something, and I'm going to get screwed. I get it. And I accept that.
yeah. I mean, and that happens. That happens with no matter anything you do, any job you do. You're going to get some. There's some points in the year where, as an hourly position, you're not going to get the hours you really want, all your hours, and other weeks you'll get more than you want. But that's the beauty of overtime.
Right.
When you're on the salary, you can cut out early some weeks, but other weeks you're going to have to work 60 hours because that's just what the job requires.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the final things I think about too is I'm sure that that is probably one of the big things that drives this new workforce that we have in the United
Mm-hmm.
States, where people say, you know, I'm not going to just be thankful I have a job because it's not just a job. It's also what we're talking about. If I can work salaried and I can work 20 hours a week and get paid for 40 because I get my work done in 20 hours, then I'd rather have that than get an hourly wage and have to force in 40 hours worth of work.
I agree. That being
Whatever. So I'm sure that it's a relevant topic, even, you know, no matter what your age is. Um,
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's something we'll follow up with here down the road once you get some information in. But we're running out of time, so Jason, you got to take us home.
Hey, thanks for listening, everyone. Stay warm out there. As Scott said, it's kind of cold out. That was Scott. I am Jason. And as always, if you never know quite what to say, just have yourself some liquid courage.